Okay, we are recording now. Okay, hi everyone. This is Abby, Leela, and Karen, and we are part of the UCD ITL, formerly ITL, going to be ITD program.
LDT.
Program. Yes, and we are going to talk a little bit about personal marketing with digital storytelling. I'm Abby. I am in my very last semester and applying to graduate and all that good stuff this summer. And I am trying to market myself for a job, and how am I going to use storytelling in this whole crazy world of trying to find a job? So that's kind of my interest in the subject and why we're here talking about it.
My name is Leela, and I'm also in my last semester, hoping to graduate in the fall, not in the summer, but I am finishing all my coursework this summer. I recently got a job as a learning and development specialist, so I'm going to be talking about some of the things that helped me when I found my job and some of the techniques that I used kind of around digital storytelling. And yeah, so that's me.
I am Karen, and I'm in digital storytelling summer 2019. I am looking at graduating in December, and I am slowly trying to build a website and a business that I can do some freelancing through, some training and instructional design work, and then eventually kind of parlay that into consulting work. So I'm interested in digital storytelling in the sense of gaining and reclining and retaining clients, and just as being able to train people in storytelling too, because I think that will be of interest to any potential partners.
Well, great. So I guess we're going to kind of start off with our resources or things that we found when we were doing some personal digital marketing with digital storytelling. So I, of course, do my usual roundup of all the Medium blogs and look at UX design blogs. And I found this really interesting blog that will be linked below and called UX Matters. And they talked a lot about using, since I'm working on my portfolio right now and taking all of the projects that I have in class and kind of putting them into a portfolio in a better sense. They're all kind of there, but I don't feel like they really are kind of in a really good line of how I could tell about myself as a designer. And I found this kind of cool little T chart, because I really like designs and theories and things that are around like charts, because it helps me kind of streamline my ideas. And I'm going to share my screen for just a second to show everyone who's watching and my colleagues this chart. Let me go to the screen share. But in this chart, it kind of shows that I should have really checked all of my things before I did this. I feel like even though I've used Zoom all the time, I just didn't do a good job. Okay, here we are. Thank you for your patience. So here is this T-shaped portfolio presentation chart. I hope y'all can see it. But what I really liked about how it shows these projects is that you each have a project going up and down, and then on each part of it, it's kind of your role or responsibility, and then it breaks down the pieces of the presentation for you. Oh, this is the business problem, these are the requirement and the scopes, this is the user research we did, this is the solution, this is deliverables, the iteration, the final solution, and the outcomes. So it's basically everything that we've kind of done in our classes, but it breaks it down in a better way, because I think a lot of employers are looking for something that tells okay, yeah, you made this thing, but how did you get to making this thing? And sometimes I have a hard time with the process of how did I make this thing? I usually think at the end of it, I'm just so tired of dealing with it. But I'm whatever, here it is. Look at it. I hope you enjoy it. Particularly in an academic setting, everyone knows what the rubric is. So how do you take something that's so focused and has a rubric and take that into the business world or corporate setting where you don't have a straight rubric? I also did personal assisting for being a personal assistant for so long that I have like such random projects and things that I've done that I feel like you have to tell the story behind it for it to make sense. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quickly. And so that was kind of what was something that I found that I was really, interested in, or like didn't, or that I thought was a really good resource for me to help streamline my thoughts, because I get a little all over the place when I think about things.
Are you thinking that this style of storytelling would work for your website in terms of helping you tell your story as a professional, or are you kind of thinking like as an interview technique, or both?
Kind of both. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. Particularly, like before the recording stopped, Karen and I were talking about how to use storytelling and like interviewing, because that's kind of an easier thing for me to do, I feel like, because it's just talking about it. But I think more of storytelling, I think something that I see a gap in my portfolio is that I have all these just kind of random projects, and what do they mean to me? And a couple semesters ago, I started blogging about my projects, which make it a little bit better. But sometimes I think that the visual storytelling is better than the words. And sometimes I have a hard time doing it without words or making it like condensed. I feel like I go off on a weird track sometimes.
Do you have something in mind like that you would want to use this format for, to tell a story? Like, is there a project or?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of projects that I have. Particularly, we did a like career inquiry project in the research class in Brent's class last semester. And it was really cool. And I built like kind of a slideshowy thing with all of these visualizations about like what, going into an e-learning or ID career in the corporate setting, like what it looks like. And I just wish I had a better way of telling my story's connection to that project in between those slides, because it kind of just checked the boxes for the project getting done, like I was talking about, like the rubric of what we needed to do, but it didn't really like round out the story of who I am as a designer and why I'm looking at these things, I suppose.
Do you think that there could, since we are working on our portfolios, is something that you could include with that project when you post it that might do that now that you've had time to reflect on it a little bit?
Yeah, that's what I'm working on. That's kind of how I'm taking it, as like there's these projects, but I really need to like say what the things are and what my thought processes are around them, and not just have them as like, here's this project I made. So it's kind of hard to know like where the blogging stops and starts and where the portfolio part begins, I guess. Because I feel like the portfolio is just so standalone sometimes, and where the blogs, like I was saying, like round out the story about it. Those are the things I like. I don't know how to disseminate them as as these two different things, but yet they're telling you the same kind of thing in my like base camp site. And I'm kind of frustrated with that, because I'm like, I've already written a blog about this, but yet I have to showcase it in a different way in this setting, I suppose.
Well, I'd love to see both of your final products when you're done, just to kind of see the different styles that people are using and answers that they come up with to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be done on Friday apparently, so we can send them right over. I thought it was due at the end of the summer session. I didn't realize that it was due so soon. But
yeah.
Are you guys planning on keeping up with like a website or blogging or digital? What is your planned digital presence after you're through with the program?
I probably will blog a lot more. I actually like blogging. I think that's like the thing that I really have liked doing I have all these ideas for blogs. I just don't know how to promote my blog. And I know that we've talked about doing that in class, but none of my like friends and family and the people that I'm like directly related to are not that they're not interested. They nod along when I ramble about this kind of stuff. but I just don't know how to like promote it really well, you know? Like I read all the really cool Medium ones and there's people that I follow, but how do you get followers when you're just starting out, I suppose?
I think that's kind of the $1,000,000 question for, that's why there's so many gurus and snake oil people out there telling you how to get followers and,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a website that, or not a website, but a tool that they use at my new job where they, what do? They use, it's called SharePoint. It's through Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft SharePoint. And they have, it's like a whole bunch of different tools, but one of the tools that they have is an employee directory where it has our photo and it has like a biography and interests and stuff like that. And one thing I noticed that nobody takes advantage of is that there's a place where you can link to your blog there. So I was kind of thinking about doing that, but I have to check and see, if it's okay to link to a personal blog or if it needs to be a work-related blog. But that could be one thing once you get this Austin job, if they have some way to present that or like to give you an opportunity to promote it. But I think other than that, just remembering to post it on Twitter or things like that will help you build up steam.
Yeah. I do wonder about that because I read a lot of companies' blogs a lot, like on Medium, like a company will like have a blog and they have like different people come in. And I want to be like, do you have a blog that I can like just randomly say things about what we're working on for? Because I think that's like, I like that when I read about people's companies and like what they do and when they explain things out on Medium. I think it's really interesting and it helps round out the corporate world for me because it's kind of this crazy place, I think.
Yes.
Where everything's different.
In that vein, I had done, you mentioned the whole digital storytelling and professional bio. So like my first set of research was kind of about how to do a professional bio, what you need to cover. And then mine, I can probably put the link to, it's with the Digital Marketing Institute and it's trends in storytelling, digital storytelling in particular. And I thought it was kind of helpful. Let's see if I can bring it up. Maybe I could screen share too. Let's see here. Oh, I guess I'm disabled from screen sharing.
Oh, no. Let me see if I can change that. Let's see. Preferences? Is that how you do that? Manage participants?
Yeah, it says I can't screen share either, so. We could always send you our links and you could just open them.
Yeah, well, I'll send them and I'll post them in Slack. Sorry, guys. I thought that I had put all the...
That's okay.
Taken all the things off. I'll keep looking for it.
Here. You want me to Slack it to you then?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Moment.
Advanced sharing. Okay, now you guys can all share.
Oh.
Let's see here. Okay. So this is 6 storytelling trends marketing leaders should know about, but I thought it could apply potentially to our professional storytelling. Because as you mentioned, Abby, I think it's one of the hardest things to do is to talk about yourself. It's easy to present information about external things, but like when I applied to this program and you have to talk about yourself, I was kind of like, ugh. So, but anyway, data driven, and I don't know if it's this class or the other class where we talked. I think it was this class where we had the TED example, the sort of cliche TED talk.
Oh yes.
And they have the.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, so they have that section about using data and that being a part of like every story, and it's kind of like that old-fashioned thing that there's lies and then there's statistics. But I think you can shape data in a lot of different ways, and I liked. I think it was this class too where we were looking at the different sites, and there was the more data-driven sites. There was like the New York Times, how they looked at word frequency, and then they presented it visually by the size of the text. And I thought that was really effective and simple and not overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then this thing says mini ads, and that's such a huge trend, like with flash fiction, and particularly with e-learning, that they want micro learning, because if people see something that's going to be 20 minutes, they just won't even start it. And this one I thought it was interesting. This is just like a little 6-second thing about the species, and it conveys a lot of information in a pretty compact amount of time. So I thought that was clever. And then everyone knows the customer-led advertising. So I thought, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I think is worth looking at for personal and professional biography.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the basics of those would just be like, who are you? What do you do? How do you do it? What do you think about it?
Yeah.
So I will stop sharing.
Is there something that you feel like is a challenge other than talking about yourself that kind of like, I don't know, happens when you're...
Yeah, I feel like there's this tension between wanting to avoid cliche, but then if you do something that isn't cliched, people, I don't know, aren't amenable to it. Particularly in the corporate world, there's such an orientation toward, if something makes it into like the mainstream, then everybody wants to do it, and you kind of have to participate in that, even if it's like, oh, it's a little bit hackneyed, but it's just kind of like, what do you do that's original, but nobody wants to hear anything original. They kind of want to hear the same old thing all the time.
Yeah, I think about that about like personal information. Like you should give this personal flair of yourself, but like how, like, where do you say, I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like they're also judging you to be like, can you be part of this company culture, but you don't know their culture yet? And it's like, well, what personal thing can I say about myself? I don't know. I feel like you need like this magic ball that's like, tell them that you like reading, they'll like that.
Yeah. It's kind of that struggle to be all things to all people, and then it's like I've gone through a lot of, articles, be all things to all people, but then don't forget to be yourself. It's kind of like, okay.
I think Karen, you brought up a good point earlier where you said, perhaps not every place you interview is necessarily like where you want to end up, if that makes sense. And I think, I've definitely had interviews where I was excited about the company and excited about the job. And then I got there and I got to know the team and kind of the feel based on just what I saw in the interview. And I knew kind of that it might not be the best fit for me as well, if that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah. There was a couple of jobs I interviewed for in Denver where I was really excited about it. And then I got to know like their leadership style and their management based on how they were communicating with me and getting words from like their higher ups. And I could have gotten the job. They just didn't have the funding for it. But I think even if I had gotten the job, I don't know that I would have been happy in the long run. So
yeah.
I think you're just as much as they're interviewing you, you're kind of interviewing them to see how you feel.
Yeah.
Empowering yourself in the interview kind of thing. Yeah. What about you, Leila? Do you have any resources or things?
Yes, I do. Now that I can share, I will do so. Alrighty. Let me just... Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing, and I had shared this with Abby maybe a month ago or a month and a half ago, when I was looking for jobs. One of the things that I found that was super helpful was creating a word map or like through Wordle or another word generator. So what you do is you look at all the job postings that you're interested in and you copy and paste the description into a word generator like Wordle, and then it makes a map like this. And so then you can kind of see based on the size of the word, like what is being used very frequently. So in this case, you can see design, UX, team, wireframes, solutions, skills. And then in this other one that I had over here, I can get to it. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it. Hold on. You can see, he has SharePoint, which is something that my company uses, and then just other keywords. And so thinking about in relation to this class, I like the application of taking a digital tool like this to kind of compile these words and really think about what are the big things that these companies are looking for and how you can take that and craft your own kind of story about yourself through your resume or through your cover letter, or just speaking to them on the phone, and how you can use some of those digital tools in your own storytelling to portray those things. And I thought that that was a really neat idea. So, and there's a couple of them. And I've seen things that say, do the Wordle thing, don't do the Wordle thing. But I mean, it worked for me. It helped me get a job. So I think it definitely has merit, and it's a useful thing, especially when you're trying to, if your resume isn't effective, if you're trying to make it a little bit more effective. So that's kind of what I found. And those are my 3 resources. So I can put those in Slack for everyone to see and for you guys to see if anyone's interested in doing that as well.
So in terms of, you plugged in, I guess, the verbiage from your resume and then created the word cloud.
No, it's the other way. So I took the job posting, like all the job postings I was interested in for instructional designer or learning designer. I took what they were looking for in all of those, plugged them in, and then got a word cloud so I knew what are the bigger things that I should emphasize in my resume.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And I will say, after Leela sent that to me, I did do it. I did something kind of like that. And then I like Frankensteined the words and like examples of like all these big things. And I would put them in my cover letter depending on the job posting. And I did get a call back after I did it. Like it had been kind of radio silence for a while. And then I guess it goes through they run it through like an analytics system where they check the words in there first before they send you to look at a person.
Now, are you doing it per posting, or are you doing it like cumulatively where you've looked at 5 postings and this is the grand kind of scheme of multiple?
I did it cumulatively.
Yeah. So did I. I just did it with a bunch of them, and I looked at what are the biggest things that employers want and how does that match up with what I know how to do. Because obviously if they want something that I don't know how to do, I'm not going to put it in my resume. But then I knew what to focus on, especially in my cover letter, because you are telling a story about yourself and you're trying to kind of say, this is who I am, this is why I think I would be a good fit for this job, but then it kind of gives you those key things that they're really looking for that you can focus on. So that way you're not just talking about something that they have no interest in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What did you find were like your top 5?
Let me pull up my resume really fast because I don't remember off the top of my head.
I would say communication was a bigger one than I thought it would be. Like the word communication was, I don't know, maybe it's because I look at a lot of remote positions, but that was definitely one that I kind of had left out because I look at it as a weird kind of like soft skill, but I did like link, like I used to be a personal assistant, so I used to have to communicate a lot, like quickly, and like here's a blog post I did about it or something that relates to communication. And I'd always like link something that I've done to like one of my blog posts that kind of relates to it. Sometimes it's a stretch for sure.
Yeah. I get a lot of advice, those advice columns, and sometimes I end up being like, well, I think these are all kind of logical things to say, but I also don't think the people that write them are hiring managers. I think they're writing their ideal world,
Did that show up? Can you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So just make it a little bit bigger. Some of the things that I really focused on, because the things that kept coming up again and again for my particular experience were storyline, and InDesign. A lot of these other ones weren't, oh, and Camtasia. So those are like the big three. So a lot of them said you need to know Storyline or Captivate. So one of those two, InDesign and Camtasia were the three big ones that kept coming up again and again and again. And then in terms of the soft skills, and even though I actually didn't put it in there, this is kind of a different version. A lot of them wanted to know that you are able to work with little direction, so that they know that they're not going to have to hold your hand or walk you through how to do things, that you can kind of take something and run with it. And those were the big ones that I noticed. And then over here on this side was knowing how to maintain relationships, because you're working with different people, like subject matter experts and things like that. And then the other one was adult learning principles came up like a lot. So those were my big ones that I noticed, and I tried to put them in there. And I think some of the things that they said was, if you can work in just the word a few times, like if you can put it over here in skills, and over here in your experience, then when they run your resume through their system, it's going to flag it as being good, because they're seeing those words that they want in your resume. So not like throwing it in there a bunch of times, but putting it strategically and where it makes sense, so that it gets recognized in their system as being a potential good fit.
Yeah.
Well, your resume looks great. I noticed when I was looking, a lot of times, some of them let you submit your resume, but then sometimes a lot of them you have to walk through an application where you have to fill out their thing.
Oh, I hate
that.
that.
Can be kind of, yeah.
I hate it when you have to upload it and then you go to the next page and you just have to write everything.
Right.
It'd be nice if it was standardized, but they're all different, and and just like,
And even when they upload the stuff for your resume, it's always all wrong. Like I have to like rechange everything. It's in the wrong places.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is a full-time job,
It is.
There is another thing that I sent Abby, but do you remember what it was called? It's like, there's a formatting, it's like a word. You have to make sure that your resume is compliant with a certain type of system. Otherwise, the computer will not be able to read it, like the automated computer, and it will never reach a recruiter's desk. And so like my resume, for instance, I made it in Canva and I exported it as a PDF, and apparently no computer could read it because of the formatting. And so I had to remake it in Microsoft Word and then save it as a PDF, because it wasn't compliant with that computer system. So anytime I applied for a job, they couldn't see it.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's all complicated.
it's a lot more learning about technology and like how to beat the system than like who you actually are, it feels like, and the story of yourself when you think about the technical things about it. But we are coming up on our time. I think we might have actually surpassed our time.
Okay. Oh, and I found the name, Karen, if you're interested in what it's called.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So you need to just Google, like if you're looking it up, it's ATS compliant, which is application tracking system. So there's a lot of websites where you can run your resume through to see if it's ATS compliant. And if it's not ATS compliant, then that means that potentially employers that you're sending your resume out to, they just will never see it because it's getting just denied by the computer system.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Well, I hope that you guys learned something, or that we all kind of learned something. I feel like sharing this stuff is really good. And I'll link all of the stuff that Karen and Leela have in what I have in Slack. And I thank you all for coming. I'm just gonna.
Okay.